Okay, so if you went to your doctor because you have concerns about your thyroid or your hormones, and they looked at the results and said, don't worry, everything's fine, you might want to ask for a copy and check yourself. Hey.
Introducing the Parameta Bliss Podcast, a show dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of achieving optimal health naturally as you transition into perimenopause and menopause. Get ready to join your host, Dr. Seth Yates, an experienced naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, and kinesiologist, as he shares his wealth of knowledge acquired from over 40,000 patient visits and 15 years in working with perimenopausal females. Welcome to the Parameta Bliss Podcast.
This is Doc Yates. Welcome to Parameta Bliss Podcast, brought to you by ParametaBliss.com and ablehealth.us. And today I want to talk about why it is important that you have at least a basic understanding of certain labs when it comes to your thyroid and when your hormones. And the reason I'm doing this podcast today, because it's come up in clinic again, where I've had yet another, when I say yet, I don't mean like the second one or the third one. I mean, this happens all the time. I've had so many clients who come back like, no, my doctor said my results are normal. And okay, that's great. Let's bring in a copy. Give me a copy of your most recent results and we'll take a look and we'll just confirm that. And then when I check, they never even tested those things in the first place. So I don't know how they could comment to say everything's normal when they've never even checked it. Or if other times, which is even more common, they don't really check that in depth. So let's go through it. Because there's just been too many, I just don't want to see your case, you get something get missed. Because it can be really frustrating when you're trying to get results, feel better, feel your best. But yet you're fighting against a hormone or thyroid imbalance on your own. That is just going to lead to you spinning your wheels and getting very frustrated. So let's dive into it. For the thyroid, doctors generally are very good at testing TSH. TSH, keep in mind, is not technically a thyroid hormone. It is from your brain telling your thyroid to work. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating your thyroid stimulating hormone, which means it's your brain sending a message to stimulate your thyroid that it needs more production, ramp up production. That number is the opposite. Okay, so the higher the number is, the lower your thyroid is. The lower your TSH, generally speaking, the better your thyroid, unless it's so low that means that your thyroid has gone hyper. Now, that's not as common as hypo, but it is just something to be aware of. So there is a range. Generally speaking, depending on the lab, the range can go anywhere from 0.35 all the way up to 5. Now, interestingly enough, with the TSH, say you're trying to get pregnant. When you're trying to get pregnant, they're like, oh, well, for being pregnant, we need optimal levels, which means your TSH needs to be under 2. But yet for everything else for the rest of your life, they're like, oh, no, you're like 4.5, almost 5, but you're still within the range. Whatever your body needs to be from an optimal health so that you can actually get pregnant, that is your optimal health. So that's what we're shooting for. You want your TSH to be ideally under 2. Now, then there's the next two things that they don't typically even test. This is free T4 and free T3. Let me break those down. And then I'll give you a summary so you know exactly what you're going to want to ask for and check. After your brain tells your thyroid to work with TSH, it produces something called free T4. Now, the 4 in the free T4 represents the number of little iodine subunits on it. So it has more iodine in it than a T3. So your thyroid's producing this T4. It's a thyroid hormone. It's not as active as T3. So it doesn't really give you the same benefits for energy and metabolism that T3 does, but it's the starting point. Your body then converts this T4 in your muscles and in your liver to this more active T3. When you're getting your thyroid checked, make sure you're getting at least, as a minimum, all of those checked. T4, T3, so not even that, more specific. Free T4, as in Free, free T3, and TSH. If there is a family history of autoimmune, you need to check for thyroid antibodies. And if it's a case where you've been getting your thyroid treated, but yet things are only getting worse, then you want to check something called reverse T3. So write this down. The absolute most in-depth thyroid panel is TSH, free T4, free T3, thyroid antibodies, reverse T3. From a general screen, TSH to me is not enough. From a general screen, you're doing TSH, free T4, free T3. Now, from the thyroid, now you know from a thyroid standpoint what are the things that you want to make sure that you're getting checked so that you make sure that things are actually being checked properly. Now we're going to do the same thing with your hormones. Now, the hormones that you want to get checked does vary on what your goal is for hormones. If you want, as a female, if you want like the most comprehensive panel, you'd still want to be checking estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, FSH, LH. But these things can all vary kind of depending upon what you're really trying to figure out. Because the one thing, especially for here, like for naturopathic medicine in Canada, every time we check a box off to test more things, it's not covered through OHIP, which is our kind of our health plan, our government health plan. It's not covered through that. So every checkbox means the price goes up. So what I usually do is focus on the main things. Now, generally when you see your doctor, and since this is my Perimental Bliss audience, you're going in because you're getting symptoms of perimenopause or menopause. You're going in because you have hot flashes or night sweats, or your cycle's starting to change, or your mood's starting to change, or you're having difficulty losing weight. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll check your hormones. And you think they're going to check your hormones, but then they only ever check FSH and LH. And all that's doing is really checking to see if your ovaries are failing. Now, typically what happens, though, is that before you get to full ovarian failure, is that your hormone levels that you're producing start to decline, especially progesterone. So rather than just checking FSH and LH, you want to make sure they're checking progesterone and estrogen. That is the bare minimum. They have to make sure they're checking estrogen, which is generally going to be estradiol. So you might want to write that down. Estradiol, DIOL, and progesterone. If you're having other symptoms, especially say if it's like a PCOS case, you want to get your androgens checked, you want to get your testosterone checked, you want to get DHEA checked, and get that, and DHT checked. So write all of those down. You can listen back to this and pause it as you need to write things down for a PCOS case. And then for a fertility case, the same thing. You'd be checking everything we talked about for thyroid and all the hormones that we've talked about so far for female hormones. So the other thing too is that when it comes to hormone testing, timing is important. So if your doctor sends you for hormone testing, they're like, yeah, just go. That's not always a good sign, because your hormones do fluctuate throughout the month. Now, if you've been in menopause and haven't had a period for, a year, then just go anytime, because it's going to be impossible to get a read on where you should be going anyways. But if you're still getting a regular cycle, generally speaking, you would want to go about 7 days. I would say 5 to 7 days, to be honest. 5 to 7 days before you get your period, especially when you're dealing with cases like PCOS and fertility. If I have clients too, when they start noticing in perimenopause that their PMS is getting, and PMS symptoms, which means mood changes, bloating, spotting before their periods, breast tenderness, all of those things, if those usually start getting worse, they usually start getting worse about anywhere from 4 to 6 days before someone gets their period. Generally speaking, especially if your cycle is becoming more regular, so it's like, I don't know when I'm going to get it, so I don't know when 7 days is before, then I'll have people go during that time when they have those symptoms. So at least we know that an approximate idea of where they are in their cycle. Because some people, if I say, okay, go on, 7 days before your period, and they're like, well, it could be 34 days, it could be 25 days this time, they don't know. So when you start getting those PMS symptoms, it's a great time to go. So I hope when it comes to getting your hormones checked, this sheds a little bit of light on the need for you to be a little bit more you have to be your own advocate when it comes to your health, which means, no, you don't have to have a full med school degree, but you do want to make sure that you have some basic understandings about labs related to your concerns, so that you at least know that you're properly being checked, like as the minimums. Those are the minimums. It's kind of like a building code standard. It's like, these are the, make sure you build this to the minimum. But a really good builder is going to go above and beyond. Just like a good doctor is going to go above and beyond. But if you're not even getting to the building code standard, to the minimums, you want to know at least on your own that what's being missed, so that you can take things up a level. So I hope this was helpful. This is Doc Yates, and I am signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to the Paramena Bliss podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and visit paramenobliss.com for more valuable information on how you can thrive during your transition through perimenopause. Join our community of like-minded women who are dedicated to achieving optimal health naturally, and stay up to date with the latest tips, tricks, and advice from Dr. Seth Yates. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Paramena Bliss podcast.